Today's Toy Spot, we are having a look at the Hasbro Marvel Legends. This was the X-Men series Juggernaut wave. We're having a look at the Build-A-Figure Juggernaut. Yes, finally we got Juggernaut now in hand, and I have to admit, he is a really nice looking Build-A-Figure. In recent memories, I'm trying to think of ones that really stood out to me. I did like the Abomination wave that we've just recently looked at. Just trying to think of really any notable standout waves where it's like not only am I anxious for the individual figures, but I'm also really anxious to put together the Build-A-Figure. Usually it was always one or the other. Really looking forward to build a figure, but really wasn't super crazy about maybe some of the individual figures that we got leading up to the Build-A-Figure. Or, in turn, a lot of good figures in waves for a somewhat mediocre Build-A-Figure. And I think this is a one notable exception where there was really good figures, and then the icing on the cake was that each of the figures came with buildable components to get ourselves a really equally cool Build-A-Figure Juggernaut here. Juggernaut as a whole, I guess the only thing I could really compare it to, I don't have him here, unfortunately. I'm trying to actually think of what I did with him, was the original Toy Biz Juggernaut. Really, for many collectors, set the bar for what Marvel Legends as a whole should be, or really in this case, what a Juggernaut should be, that a lot of figures then tried to compare it. You know, we're always being compared to that Toy Biz. The problem with the Toy Biz Juggernaut is it was just a very sheer, very large, wide, bulky figure. I did the review of him like a long time ago if you guys want to check him out, but truthfully, I don't even know what I think I might have even sold a lot of the Toy Biz Marvel Legends that I had in my collection. So for me, like, aside from the Marvel Select Juggernaut that now has recently come back to my collection, this is the only Juggernaut that still, well, now can be added to my collection. A lot of those figures, I reluctantly, in some cases, just felt I didn't really need them anymore, and I sold them off. So Juggernaut here, kind of a new addition, a new Juggernaut that I can add to my set, my collection, and I think the figure, for the most part, turned out really good. I mean, he's not, if I kind of just like look at the details to him, he's not a perfect figure. One of the main problems I have with the figure is his helmet. Let's, you know what, we'll start the face and then we'll kind of work our way down. His face doesn't sit, or the helmet I should say, doesn't sit flush to his shoulders. There's a big gap in between the top of his helmet and the shoulders, and I thought maybe the ball joint wasn't pushed in all the way, but it is pushed in all the way. It just doesn't sit flat. I wish it actually had sat closer to his torso and not left this very noticeable gap around it. There's workarounds to that. You could angle the head a little bit more so down, which does a pretty good job of hiding it until you turn around to the back and it's even more obvious than before. But front on you don't see it as much. It's not as noticeable. The coloring on him is good. The helmet, I think, is a little jarring for me because the helmet is so shiny. It has some nice indentations to it where you can see that Juggernaut has probably rammed himself through, different harder obstacles. And it's nice, but it might be a little too shiny and too detailed for an otherwise rather neutral and rather plain body. The browns are nice. At least I could say like the head portion of him blends better to the strappings that are around his forearms. But like a lot of this just seems very much on a plain side. His belt is also sculpted nicely and gets a little extra detailing. But so much of the rest of the figure is very smooth, very clean, very pristine, and could have maybe afforded a little extra something. I don't know if it was just additional, maybe if they had put a darker wash in some of the creviced areas, not overly dark, not excessively dark, but something just to kind of blend this to this. Obviously, one of the things that I promised in this review, Let's put Marvel Legends Build-A-Figure Juggernaut over there. And let's reach off camera. Where is he? Where is he? Where is he? Let's bring in the very large, the very mammoth-sized Marvel Select Juggernaut here. And obviously night and day, at least from a size standpoint of things, Marvel Select Juggernaut is not too much bigger really than the Marvel Legends Juggernaut. He's maybe about like half an inch, maybe 3/4 of an inch taller than him, but he's a lot broader. And I don't know if I would say like this guy had to be the drastic level of paint that this guy has, because you know this guy brings a lot to the table by having the separation of the reds to the browns, which this one, you know, as much as I love this figure, doesn't have as much of that. The reds are almost as brown as the browns that the traditional traditional Juggernaut colors seem just more one common color, other than really the boots, which seem a slight bit different. This one here, at least you get a stark red, brown, and then the brown helmet. But I don't know if, even like looking at the helmet on this Juggernaut, if it was even like this coloring and didn't have the additional wash to it, this helmet would almost incorporate better, I think, to this body instead of having an excessively shiny helmet. I know that the helmet isn't supposed to be a continuation of his suit. It's a helmet that, you know, he wears on top to protect his head. It doesn't need to necessarily be the same coloring as his body, but I don't know if I would say it needs to be as shiny as it's being presented here. Let's see if we can actually get a look at his face. Juggernaut. Oh boy, I'm going to be saying this for at least for the rest of this review. Juggernaut here has a real sinister, crazy look on his face, which I think fits perfectly for Juggernaut. His teeth aren't as nicely presented, rather than, you know, if we look at the Marvel Select Juggernaut, his teeth are at least fairly straight. I would question a little bit of the gray in his gums, but relatively straight teeth. Marvel Legends Juggernaut here has really crooked, awkward, overlapping teeth. The helmet is not removable. I mean, the helmet is removable, obviously, but it's not removable from his face. You wouldn't be able to take the face and leave it solely on its own. But again, like the two figures bring different things to the table. If you want just a sized, bulky Juggernaut, this guy is the way to go. Like, he's just, even picking him up, he feels heavy. This Juggernaut doesn't feel as heavy, but he fits better, I think, with Marvel Legends. Like, if we just bring in like a Wolverine, if I put poor little Wolverine in between the two of them, I think this Juggernaut's a little too big. This Juggernaut at least fits better from a scaling, and also because he has similar posability. So obviously this one fits better for him. Again, I think for me it's not the deal breaker. It's not a deal breaker element for me. But I think one thing that slightly hinders this guy is really only just his helmet. Let's move Select Juggernaut out of the way. He's just really too big to keep for the rest of this review in frame. And let's kind of go through the posability here on Juggernaut. Now his head is on a ball joint, so it does rotate up and down. But just the big gap between his head and the torso seems so ever apparent. Shoulders hinge out, and rotation all the way around on the shoulders as well. He has a rotation on the bicep. He has a single bend in the elbow. You're really not going to get much with Juggernaut here because he's just so, like, his arms are so broad, you wouldn't get like a double hinge going on there. But he has a rotation also in the wrists. You can also rotate the hinge back and forth on the wrist portion. He has an upper torso crunch, and I mentioned this before in the previous review. I think it was for, might have been Phoenix. The off-coloring here in the torso. You have fairly bright reds on the sides, but in the middle you have a more dismal, dark, dingy, faded red. the brightness of the red is carried over to the boots, but then draws even more attention then to the fact that the middle torso, the middle portion of his torso, has the more faded red. I'm not sure why that's the case, but it carries over obviously on both sides. Then when you get to his legs go forward and back and out. He has a top swivel cut on the thigh. He has what only appears to be a single hinge in the knee. Nothing in the boot portion, but he does have a hinge up and down on the feet. Slight ankle, yeah, a considerable actual ankle pivot back and forth as well. Overall, it's a good looking Juggernaut. It's not, I would think, I don't know if I would say it's my favorite Juggernaut, because once again we bring in Marvel Select Juggernaut. It's really hard to compete against this. You know, this guy's got more, I think this guy's got more going for him from a coloring standpoint, because he's a more traditional Juggernaut colors, a more very obvious brown versus a very stark red. You know, you see it a little bit better here on Juggernaut. This guy is kind of more just a muddying overall look. You know, the red gets so lost here. It's a little more obvious here, but some red here would have been ever crucial to kind of break this all up. This Juggernaut's got it, but I feel like where this Juggernaut falters and this one does better is that the head seems more consistent with the body. This Juggernaut, on the other hand, the helmet seems, in my personal opinion, a little too shiny for the rest of his body. Still a great looking Juggernaut. I think it's, obviously as we get more advanced Marvel Legends and they get a little bit better in design, comparing this guy to the likes of a Toy Biz Juggernaut, I think I would still go with this Juggernaut over the original Toy Biz. He's not perfect, the helmet being the big one for me. It's not perfect, but for a new Juggernaut, it really fits, for the most part, all the things I would want Juggernaut to feature. Let me know down below, guys, what you think of Juggernaut now that we've seen him fully assembled. And of course, what Spot always does when we look at the Build-A-Figures, we're going to look at the top 3 figures from the Marvel Legends Juggernaut wave. And actually, I did have a tough time coming up with this, because so many of these figures are so good, it's almost even easier to pick my top 3 least favorite figures from this wave. But I tried to kind of narrow it down to my top 3. I don't know if you would agree with it or not, but my top 3 favorite figures from this wave, I would say actually Wolverine 1. And again, I really had a tough time with this, because as good as Wolverine is, there were so many other good figures. For his accessories, I probably would have said Deadpool as number 2. And number 3, just because she is so necessary as an X-Men member, and just because we don't have much to go comparing it to, I'd probably say my number 3 is Rogue, just because she is such a crucial character if you've been building the X-Men Marvel Legends figures. To be honest, it was a toss-up for sculpts, because I really like Kitty Pryde. And I do really like Phoenix. So again, it was a very hard pick to pick a top 3. But I think I'm happy with this choice. You may say on Spot, I don't know, you lost us on this one. But I think I'm happy with this choice. This is really my favorite Wolverine, though I don't really, again, like his bent claw. And it's a really good Deadpool. And I'm really happy with this Storm, or this Rogue. The figures all could still have little tweaks that I would have done differently to them. But I think I'm happy with these 3 figures as my top 3 favorite figures, with probably a very close 4th, possibly even tying a 3rd to Kitty Pryde, and then to Phoenix. After that, I would probably say Havoc. And least favorites, I would say, are Cable. And at the very, very bottom, I would put Iceman. That's just my own personal opinion. Let me know down below, guys. Certainly, I hope you've enjoyed these videos, but let me know down below your top 3 favorite figures and your top 3 least favorite figures from this wave. In the meantime, today's Toy Spot, we were wrapping up our reviews of the Marvel Legends Juggernaut wave. Of course, we were looking finally at a fully built Juggernaut, which for the most part, Spot does actually like. Stay tuned, guys. Even though Spot's finished his reviews of the Marvel Legends Juggernaut wave, certainly a lot more videos heading your way. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.